too for me.
Perfect.
Okay.
Linda, let's start with the Parkinson's disease. Tell me about your life currently.
Well, you're looking at it. Parkinson's disease is a movement disorder. So whatever you try to do that involves movement is going to be kind of compromised. I'm still getting around, but it's harder and harder.
And I know here in your neighborhood, you like to go for walks and hikes. Are you still able to do stuff
I
like
walk around
that?
the neighborhood a little bit. Only a couple of blocks now. I used to walk down to the beach. I don't do that anymore, but it's such a great neighborhood. You walk 5 minutes and you're at the beach, an ocean beach with with breakers. But my life is very different. It's just all there is to it. I think I'm lucky. When I start to feel sorry for myself, I just always say I had a long turn at the trough.
Do you experience discomfort on a daily basis?
Yes.
How does that manifest itself?
Well, it's just really hard to move. It's hard to wash my hair, brush my teeth, put my clothes on. It's hard to get up and out of a chair. But once I get going, I can go for a little bit. But it's you don't get any juice from your brain to hold up your spine, for instance. So my spine is collapsing a little bit, so I get a lot of back trouble. That's the worst part of it. I just feel like right now I'm glad that I can lie down in a sort of a comfortable position and nothing hurts. For me, that's like wildly wonderful.
I know there's no cure for Parkinson's, but I know there are medications that can arrest some of the symptoms.
Yeah, I take one of them, but they have, the really strong ones have pretty nasty side effects, fluoride hallucinations being one. It can be, not everybody gets it, but I won't even take an aspirin unless I ask 5 people, It's just, I'm very conservative, not in my politics, but in drug taking. I always have been, and probably why I'm still alive.
When did you first find out about it?
About a year and a half ago. I was diagnosed about a year ago, maybe a little less than a year ago. It's hard to diagnose. There's a way of taking a sample of your voice. Right now they run some kind of a pattern recognition process with it. And I think that's one of the most accurate ways now they can diagnose it early. But, I didn't know what was wrong. I just thought I didn't feel well. And I was dropping things, and it was hard to, I thought that forks had become designed very oddly. I said that all these modern forks, they don't work, I want to get an old-fashioned fork, but they're the same old forks I'd always had. So things were falling off my fork all the time. I was dropping things when I would try to do things in the kitchen. I couldn't handle a knife very well. So, and I was having a hard time driving. I wasn't sure of myself driving. So I stopped driving. But some people have Parkinson's disease and they take a pharmaceutical and they can ski, I've heard, It affects different people different ways. It depends on what part of your brain it's chomping up at the time.
But you noticed symptoms that caused you to say to yourself, I need to see a doctor.
Oh yeah, I knew something was wrong. I just didn't expect it to be Parkinson's disease, but my grandmother had it, so. And I went, oh, maybe I think there's a hereditary factor, maybe not. They don't really know. It's kind of a mystery as to why it happens, and there hasn't been enough research. Stem cells seem to show the most promising cure, of course, and the Republicans won't allow that, because they're so hooked up on abortion they can't even see the forest for the trees. They don't want to help living people. They're just interested in helping the unborn.
What do you? Kind of a tough question to ask, but what's the long-term prognosis?
Well, a long-term prognosis is death, I guess. I mean, something's going to kill you eventually.
Yeah,
so.
Exactly. But once you heard Parkinson's, and as you said, you were kind of surprised by it.
It takes a long time to kill you. Something else will probably get me first.
Yeah.
I mean, what can you do? We're all going to die, so you have to say, well, I had a good ride.
So you don't dwell on it?
No, I don't think about it. I think about what's going to happen today. Because I just figure I don't have a crystal ball. I can't really tell what's going to happen in the future. I don't know what's going to happen.
It's impacted your vocal cords, correct?
Very much so, yeah. I can't sing at all. I can talk still, but I have to do more voice therapy for it. There's all kinds of therapies now that you can do to sort of try to keep your muscles toned up. It's just one of the things that happens with Parkinson's disease is lack of initiative. You just don't feel like doing anything.
Oh, really?
I'm very happy to sit in a corner and read for 6 or 8 hours, just totally happy.
I was noticing your books. You have a lot of books here.
Well, no, not very many, but, well, I wish I had. I don't have room for them all is the problem. But at any rate, that's a hard thing, is just to sort of fight against that motivation to sort of sit and look in the corner.
If you tried to sing, what would it sound like? And I'm not asking you to try
It
to
wouldn't
sing.
sound like anything. I can't get to the note. I can't make any quality sound. I can't arrange pitch. I might aim for a note and I hit another one. It would sound like shouting.
Wow.
It
Does
sound
that
like
bother
barking.
you? I mean, because you had the voice
Well,
of an angel.
you know, if you could walk every day of your whole life since you were a little child, and one day somebody cut your legs off, do you think it would bother you?
Yeah.
Yeah, it bothers me. But there's nothing I can do about it. You know, there's absolutely nothing I can do about it. There are things that would happen, like right now they're doing these Monday afternoon concerts in front of the Metropolitan Jail in Los Angeles, where they keep all the migrants, undocumented migrants that are being detained before they deport them. And it's just a way of trying to bring some focus onto the fact that these people are just sitting and they haven't done any crimes. They haven't committed any crime other than trying to find a better life for themselves and their families. And they haven't murdered anybody, stolen anything, whatever. And they're being shut up for months and months and months at a time. The children that they arrested at the border that came without unaccompanied minors were shut up in jails, and sometimes dog kennels for long stretches of time. And it's a way of sort of bringing focus to them that they've not been forgotten. I would be there in a minute singing. In a minute. I mean, there are all kinds of things that I could do to make myself useful with singing still. But I can't sing. So I just hope my friends show up. Bride Cooter's showing up. Everybody go down here where I play at the jail. It'll be a good show.
You not singing is sad for all of us, frankly.
Well, it's just a fact. Like I said again, I say I had a long turn at the trough. I had a very long time that I was able to make my living as a singer. And most of the singing that I did was at my house, in the shower and in the dishwater. That's what I miss the most.
Let's get there. I mean, you grew up in Tucson, and I know music was a big part of your life growing up and your family's life, right?
Yeah, I mean, they weren't particularly great at music. I'm a person that thinks that we shouldn't delegate art to professionals only. It's fine to have the professionals for heroes, like you need to have Caruso and Maria Callas or whoever, But Otis Redding, you need to have these people that are heroes, that are great performers. But everybody should do their own singing, dancing, and painting and drawing. And we don't do enough of our own art at home. And in our house, we had a radio, but we didn't get out to concerts a lot. I mean, we lived pretty far away from town. And occasionally we'd be taken to something, but we made our own music at home. That's what we had to do. It wasn't the greatest music I ever heard. There aren't undiscovered geniuses there. It's just that that's what we did. And we were surprised when we would go to people's houses and find out they didn't sing, It's what we did when we were washing the dishes. It's what we did when we traveled in the car. It's what we did when we were doing chores outside. We always sang. We sang in harmony. It didn't occur to me that other people couldn't sing in harmony, So I've always been a harmony singer more than anything. So I think it's important to make your kids do their own music, just suggest it to them. They can't learn music just by listening. There's two sides of, you have to be active and passive in order to really get music. And music is vital to the human experience. It's been with us since the dawn of time, so it's not for no reason that we have music. Even in the concentration camps of Germany, during World War II, they didn't have anything. They didn't have comfort. They didn't have any justice, that's for sure. But they had music. They had art. They always had art. So art is essential. Music is essential.
So, I mean, you grew up with music all around you. Your family's musical, and I think you had a band with your siblings. Is that correct?
We had a little folk trio called the New Union Ramblers. This was in the 60s, and everything was a Rambler or a Union or a New or an Old. And we played little clubs in Tucson. There wasn't very much opportunity for us there. And then my brother went to work for the police department there, and he eventually became chief of police. And I don't think the police liked the idea of my brother playing in a beatnik dive, on his night off.
Sure.
And my sister had 3 kids or 4 kids or 5 kids eventually. So I was the last man standing. I went off to Los Angeles. I just felt there was more opportunity for me there.
Yeah, what were you, like 17 at the time or 18?
18, I think.
Yeah.
When I went.
And you just decide Los Angeles.
Well,
that's a big step.
We had a little folk music club there in Tucson, and all these people from LA kept coming through. This guy Dick Rossmini, who was a guitar player in LA, big session player, and these girls Kathy and Carol that were a folk music act, and they would go to all these places and meet Pete Seeger and all these Joan Baez and people that I'd only read about. I go, well. So they said, well, if you come to Los Angeles, there's more musicians there, and there's more of an audience for this kind of music. I liked traditional music at the time, and It's just a bigger music pool. So I went over there with Bobby Kimmel, who was playing the bass for the New Union Ramblers, our family group. And he said, you know, there are enough little clubs there he could get us work if I wanted to come and sing. So the first night we got there, he said, I want you to hear this new band, you know. These musicians I think are pretty good. We went down to the Ash Grove, and it was a little band called the Rising Suns. It was Ry Cooder and Taj Mahal. They'd made a band. And I went, I mean, my head just blew my head off. They were my age, you know, and they were playing a million times better than I could ever even hope to think about. And I just thought, oh, there's a whole other thing going on down here. You know, I've got to stay. So I did. I just moved over and stayed, never went back.
Were you nervous? Were you excited? What were all of your emotions like?
Well, I was pretty overwhelmed by how much better everybody else was than I was. You know, I wasn't very good at what I thought I was pretty good when I was in Tucson. I got to LA and found out that I was like nothing, you know, lower than an earthworm on the pecking order. So I had to do some woodshedding to catch up. And I never really caught up to my heroes. You know, Ry Cooder's still one of the great elevated heroes of music to the rest of us drooling slobs. And, you know, never got any better than that. I just went, this is as good as it gets, and I was right, you know.
When you came to LA, what would you consider your first big break? Who
playing at
helped
the
you?
Troubadour, I think. You know, we played at the Troubadour. We played a hoot there, and we got an immediate response from record companies and from managers and people who are interested in our career, and signing us up and giving us a contract. They mostly actually were interested in me, and that made me feel bad because I felt like I was being disloyal to my bandmates. But as it worked out, Kenny, who was one of the Stone Ponies, wanted to go to India and travel, and he was kind of an intellectual person. And Bobby wanted to, you know, didn't like the road, and so it worked out that I sort of went off on my own. The record company developed me as a solo artist. Of course, I didn't have any repertoire. I didn't know any songs to sing. But my sister had liked Hank Williams and country music a lot when I was a kid. And I'd learned a lot of the songs just because she was playing them on the radio or playing them on the record player in our shared bedroom. And they only had 3 chords, so I could learn them. So that's what got me into country rock. It was kind of by necessity. I liked the songs and thought they were great, but I wanted to do country rock songs I wanted to do country songs with a kind of a rock and roll rhythm section. And that was what I started trying to do. Yeah. And there were a couple other groups there that had the same thing in mind. The Flying Burrito Brothers and the Dillards. They were trying to do country rock also.
Yeah, it was a real emerging time for that in Los Angeles.
Yeah, and the Byrds were doing folk rock, you know, so there was room for. Before it was always Chuck Berry and the Beatles and, you know, amplified music. Suddenly with like people like Simon and Garfunkel, there became this kind of thing of acoustic music that got a richer setting somehow and was taken a little bit more seriously. So that was the milieu that I came onto, and I was very, very overmatched.
I asked you earlier, in Los Angeles, there was also that sort of Laurel Canyon scene.
Yeah, that
was
was going on. Oh, absolutely. I mean, see, I used to live up on Kirkwood, I think. Lived in a couple places in Laurel Canyon. And it was so beautiful, you know. I mean, it was just like being out in the country. We just took it all for granted. We were right in the middle of urban Los Angeles. But this beautiful place and all these old houses that had charm, and you could rent them for $200 a month or $300 a month. You could rent a house. It was much easier than to start out. I feel sorry for kids today. They have this huge debt. You know, they have their college debt, which they never should have been saddled with. Got to do something about that.
Yeah.
And they can't afford to buy a house. They can't afford to buy a car. All they can do is pay their debt.
Hold on one second.
I need to stop. My camera stopped. It said media area.
Harvest Moon.
I sang on it.
You did?
Yeah. I sang the harmonies on it.
And
You
it
did?
Yeah, Nicolette and I.
I didn't know that.
Okay, Jennifer,
Yeah.
you're good.
Every holiday that I go on,
If you just go that way.
when I want to remember where we are, I put on my earbuds, and the song I play is Harvest Moon. And I sit
I'm
and
on
I
that
listen
song.
to it, and I just look and scan and try and keep that in my memory.
Yeah, it's a really good record.
It's beautiful. Beautiful.
And Harvest was good too. I was on that one too.
Oh, were you really?
I sang with Neil a lot. I was his backup singer a lot.
Didn't know that.
I love Neil.
Yeah, he's really talented.
I think he's the best.
Interesting guy.
Okay.
You're good to go again?
Rolling again.
I'm
Sorry
gonna,
about that.
and I'm just going to back up a little bit. Yeah. You good?
Yes.
All right. Let's get back to that. I mentioned the Laurel Canyon scene, and you said you were kind of an active part of it.
Well, let's see, Laurel Canyon. I mean, I lived up there in a couple of different houses. But it was a great time. There were just a lot of musicians. They hadn't made it yet. Nobody knew that anybody was famous particularly. Just wanted to go over to somebody's house and play some songs. And you did, and that somebody would wind up being, Richie Furay or Neil Young, or I don't know, Joni Mitchell lived up there.
Jackson Browne.
Jackson lived up there for a while. And it was just a great lively scene. But, and it would be evenings at the Troubadour, and then after that you'd go to somebody's house and jam all night, and that's the way we lived.
And that was just it. It wasn't out of the ordinary.
It wasn't. We just took it all for granted. Cheap rents and good music.
Pretty good combination. Tell me about your breakthrough success. When did it happen? What do you think caused it?
Well, I had heard a song that on a bluegrass record by this bluegrass group called the Greenbrier Boys. I like this singer named John Harold. He was a really good tenor singer. And he'd recorded this song called Different Drum, and I didn't know it had been written by Mike Nesmith. There was no Monkees yet, or maybe there were the Monkees, I can't remember, but I didn't know that it was written by one of the Monkees. I just knew that I liked the song, and I thought it was a hit. So I wanted to record it. So I told the people at Capitol Records I did, and they said, okay, so we recorded it with a mandolin and a couple of acoustic guitars. And the record company didn't like it. And so they said, well, come back, we want to recut the song. So I came back, and there was the Wrecking Crew, which is the current, bunch of studio players, great players. Don Randy was playing. Jimmy Gordon was playing drums. Jimmy Bond was playing bass, and he had done the arrangement. And they had a bunch of strings in there, and it was an orchestra session. I went, wait a minute, this is the way I thought about the song. So I sang it a couple of times, and I didn't understand how the arrangement was, and I didn't really know how to sing it that way. And when they finished it, we went on to something else, and I said, I don't want to put it on the record because that wasn't the way I'd originally envisioned it, But they wanted to use it that way, and it was a good thing they didn't listen to me because it was a huge hit.
Yeah.
So, but the time that I found out that it was going to be a hit, we were on our way down to Capitol Records to have a meeting. We had one car for the band. The Stone Ponies had this one car, and it decided to die coming down La Brea. So, the motor froze. And there was this huge sound of metal against metal just screaming. It was the worst sound. I mean, people were turning around in the street looking at us. And the car was still moving a little bit. We had to get out and push it. It had this big acoustic bass in it, and all of our guitars. And it was the only car we had. So all of a sudden we were carless in LA. We were stranded. We pushed it into a gas station. They said, this thing's never going to run again. Just have it towed to the junkyard. What are we going to do? Well, in the back of the gas station, I could hear the little for KHJ, the little, when they do the news, they make a little beeping sound. And then all of a sudden I heard the intro to Different Drum, and I knew the song was on KHJ. And if it went on KHJ, it was a hit. KHJ was the biggest station in LA. And LA was the big happening, decided whether you have a hit or not. So I was pretty happy about that, but I didn't have any car, and we were stuck,
Sure.
Didn't have any money.
I'm not sure what's more impressive, that you heard your hit or that you pushing a car down La Brea. I wish I could have seen that.
Well, three of us had to push it. It was heavy, and we didn't have any place to put the bass. We were there on the street with a huge double bass and two guitars.
Uh-huh.
It's really something.
You've had some rather famous people in your bands.
Well, they were just, again, going to the Troubadour and looking around, seeing who's good. I went down to find a drummer one night. I needed to hire a band. Had a tour set up and no band because I'd been playing with Bernie Ledden, and he'd gone off to join the Flying Burrito Brothers. And I don't know what happened to the rest of the band I'd been playing with, but they'd all gone off to do bands. And so we were walking, I was with John Boyle, and we were walking through the Troubadour, and we heard this band on stage playing Silver Threads and Golden Needles, but there was my arrangement, and they were playing the guitar solo, note for note, exactly the same as my record. I said, maybe we should just get them, they know the arrangements already. So we went and asked the drummer anyway. We said, we got a tour booked, would you like to come and play drums? And he said, yeah, he thought he'd like to do that. And his name was Don Henley. So then I decided, since I couldn't have Bernie Ledden, I was going out with J.D. Souther at the time, and he had been in a band with this guy called Glenn Fry. And he didn't have anything to do. He wasn't working, so I said, ask Glenn, he'll play guitar. So we went out on the road with Glenn and Don and a couple of other guys. We didn't have enough money for everybody to have their own hotel room. So Glenn and Don were sharing a room, and they each discovered that the other was a good songwriter and a good singer. They decided they wanted to do a band together. So Glenn used to refer to Don as the secret weapon because he was always sitting behind the drums and nobody knew he could sing. But he's a really good singer, and Glenn is a really good singer, and they both could write songs really well. So I said, great, you're going to have a band. I've got all these gigs. It's going to be a while before you get the band together, and it's going to get even longer than that before you get a record deal, and even longer before that before you get a record out and you can start playing. So why don't you work for me until you're ready to go sign your record deal? That was fine with them, so it worked out for everybody. So I suggested they get Bernie Ledden because I wanted him back in the band. And so he quit the Burrito Brothers and came to join the Eagles. And John Boylan suggested they get Randy Meisner, who's a really, really good harmony singer. So they had 4 really strong singers. It was a great harmony band, the Eagles. And they wanted to go out, they wanted to rehearse one day. So JD and I, we had this house up above the Hollywood Bowl, a little tiny house. We said, well, they could use the house to rehearse. We'd go out to the movies because there just wasn't even room for all of the Eagles and us. We came back after we went to a double feature. We came back and we could hear them singing. We stuck our head in, and they've been working on this one song that Bernie and Don had written. And they'd really refined the harmonies. It was beautiful. It was just acoustic guitars and them singing. It was a song they'd written called Witchy Woman. And I said, this band's a hit. There's just no doubt about it. I knew they were going to have huge success, and they did.
I recently saw them not long ago at the Forum in Los Angeles, the concert tour they're doing now, where it starts out with just the 2 of them, Don and Glenn.
Yeah.
And then they bring each member in, and they progress through the history of the band. And those 2, both seated on stools,
right,
paid you a huge compliment.
Oh, did they?
Mm-hmm. Excuse me. I don't know if they do it at every concert, but the one I attended at the Forum, here's the story they told. Basically the same story that you just told.
See, at least you know I tell the truth.
And they said that you really didn't have to release them from the situation they were in, but that you not only allowed them to pursue their interests, but you encouraged them, and you recommended guys that should play with them. And they said they owe you a great debt.
Well, they don't owe me anything. Their talent is what made them successful, but it was a great ride, you know. And I got to have a great band for that time. So it was good. And then when, you know, they got so famous, I go and be double bill with them, you know, open the show for them or whatever. We just go and play together. It was really fun.
Do you still see them?
Well, they live there and I live here. But I talked to Don a couple of months ago. I talked to Glenn a couple of months ago. I talked to Bernie from time to time. Bernie went out on the road with me and Emmylou Harris when we toured together. That was, I mean, Bernie is just, he's been my friend forever. You know, when we're 80, if we see each other, we just go, hey, Bern, how you doing? Sure. You know, it's just the kind of thing, you pick up the conversation the last place you left it off. It seems like no time had gone by. He's just always the same. I love him dearly.
How did you meet him?
I met him at the Troubadour. He was playing with the Dillards, I think. Oh, no, I know where I met him. I met him on a recording session. I think he was on an early Stone Ponies recording session, being very patient, you know, because we were terrible. We didn't know what we were doing. But he was brought in as a studio player. I think he was in a band called Hearts and Flowers, and they were brought in to play, you know, help us play our tracks.
How did one of everybody's favorite songs of all time, Blue Bayou, Roy Orbison? Anybody that can take a Roy Orbison song seriously and arrange it and sing it better than Roy Orbison is a god.
Well, I don't sing anything better than Roy Orbison, but it was a good song. You know, I got that song because J.D. Souther and Jackson Browne came out to my house one night when I was living in Malibu. And we were up all night long playing stuff, and Jackson played a bunch of his songs, and J.D. played a bunch of his songs. And I was trying to get them to give me their songs. You know, it was hard to get it. Like, those guys were pretty successful, so it was pretty hard for them to give you their song before they recorded it. They didn't want to do that, and I was trying to pry it out of them. So I think they threw me that one because they felt sorry for me. J.D. said, here's the song. You ought to sing this one, you know. And so we sang it together in harmony. I got a tape of it, actually. And then Jackson was producing Warren Zevon at the time. He said, oh, there's this song, not Werewolves of London, Poor Pitiful Me. He said, you ought to sing this song. And he sang it for me. And there was this verse about, I met some girl, she asked me if I'd beat her, something, 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 she wrecked my mojo heater. I said, Jackson, I can't sing that. Oh, yeah, it's from the point of view of, like, you don't want to do it, you know, it's like you're just talking about it. So anyway, we argued about that for a little while, and I decided finally to record the song, but I left that verse out, you know. So it's, you know, when you find a song that somebody else has written about their life, you have to figure out a way to sort of sink your own life into it in whatever way you can. It doesn't always work out that way. It's not always that convenient. But Warren Zevon was just a wonderful writer. I just love his work. And Jackson was so sweet. He was really promoting his buddy, you know, instead of selling one of his own songs.
Did you When you first recorded Blue Bayou, did you anticipate it? Did you say to yourself, "Boy, that's a pretty good song"?
I thought it was a good song. I like all the songs I recorded. I thought they were good songs. I never thought about it in terms of a hit or whether it was going to be successful. I just never thought about that. I thought, I just have to sing that song or I'm going to die. That's what I would think. I really want to sing that song or it's going to keep me up at night. That's how I
Really?
would think, yeah.
So would that randomly happen to you, perhaps where you're listening to the radio or you hear someone else's music and you say,
Oh, yeah, I'd hear something and go, oh, that just says my life just the way I feel it, I want to do it. And that's what I think. I just have to, like, I knock you down to get that song,
Really?
Yeah.
Does it hit you here and here when you hear a song like that?
Well, it always hits me in my heart first, I want to listen to find out that it has intelligent lyrics that aren't only be understood by a goat or a camel.
Mm-hmm.
But, usually there'll be something in the way the chord is voiced and just in the intro. A Jimmy Webb song will have me crying usually before the words even start. He's a brilliant, brilliant wordsmith. He's a great craftsman with lyrics. But there's something just so emotional in the way he voices his chords that it'll give me a stomachache before they even get to the middle of the song.
Mm-hmm.
I love his stuff.
So you're rolling along, then you get a call from Rolling Stone magazine. You got to be on the cover. Can you tell me about that?
It didn't matter. It wasn't, the music was what counted. And that's, as long as I got to have a good band and enough rehearsal, that's what I cared about, And if we were successful, that was good because it meant I got to hire better musicians.
Mm-hmm.
More money we made, the more we could pay the players.
But nonetheless, there's nobody else sitting in this house right now that's been on the cover of Rolling Stone magazine. And to hear you say, yeah, it didn't matter.
It doesn't matter. That wasn't what it was about. Who cares, basically.
Well, how about when you end up on the cover of Time magazine a year later?
Who cares? It's not such a great magazine.
Really?
I don't read it. Do you? I read the New York Times. I read the New Yorker.
Uh-huh.
What does it matter? The work is what counts.
Right.
The work is what counts. I would know whether I was doing very well or not. That's what would count. Most of the time I wasn't doing that well as far as I was concerned.
Really?
Needed to work at it a little harder, so.
Were you always putting pressure on yourself?
Well, I was always just trying to get myself to get it a little better.
Mm-hmm.
I'd be singing, I'd think, I got to sing this a little better.
So when you listened to the recording of Blue Bayou for the first time, did you think to yourself, I could have done that better?
Well, if I heard it now, I'm sure I would say, music is a work in progress. You hear something frozen like that, it's unnatural to my perception because music to me is fluid and it's always changing. Even when I'm recording, I'm hearing something live, and I never listen to the records once I'm finished with them. I don't go back and listen to them unless I absolutely have to for some reason. But it's not a good idea. It'll put a dark cloud over my week, If I hear something frozen, I hear something I should have done better. I hear something I developed later that didn't get on the record, and I think, that's too bad,
Mm-hmm.
That's the way it is.
When you were on the road touring, a lot of dates, was that constantly in your mind? I've got to improve from the last performance to this next one.
Yeah, we take the tapes of the show home and listen to them at the hotel room and figure out what we could do to make it better,
Mm-hmm.
And we play all this in the hotel room after the show. That's when the best music came out,
Mm-hmm.
Acoustic music, but that's when it was the most fun. I'm a great believer. One of my dearest friends said, who was a ballet choreographer, Michael Smuin, people were talking about whether or not they believed in God. He said, I don't believe in God, but I just believe in rehearsal. I'm with him. I believe in rehearsal.
Was the road tiring? What was that like? What was that experience like?
Well, it was like you'd have a reality that you were kind of hanging on some frail little reality, and you'd put it in this metal tube, which is like a plane with wings on it, and you'd get in, you'd close the door, and then you'd open up the door. It'd be like being in Oz. Your old reality would have been absolutely smashed flat with a hammer, and the new reality wouldn't have maybe it doesn't have anything to do with what you came from. It's pretty disconcerting.
Mm-hmm.
It's not great for maintaining relationships, but it was great for learning things. I learned a lot of stuff. In some ways, it's enriching, and in other ways, it's kind of like in the beginning of Heart of Darkness. I don't know if you ever read that by Joseph Conrad. There's a thing that talks about how provincial a sailor's life really is because he's on the ship all the time. And then they come into the harbor, and the harbors are pretty much the same. You come to the harbor in Lisbon, pretty much the same as harbor in Paris, pretty much the same as the harbor in New York, and then the same grog shops and the same chicks and the same whatever. And they don't usually penetrate further than that. So a little bit of it was kind of provincial in that way. We kind of got a little bit too used to each other's company,
Mm-hmm.
and a little too used to the idea of ourselves as the center of our own universe. You know.
Mm-hmm. Were your siblings and were your parents able to share in your success?
Well, we always sang together, so I'd always invite them over to sing on the records. We had that family blend, you know, which you can't. I mean, I love singing with my other singing companions like Emmylou Harris, Dolly Parton, and especially Aaron Neville. But there's a thing that happens with siblings. It's just you get a certain kind of blend. You don't even have to try, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So they came and sang on my Mexican records. They sang on Silver Threads and Golden Needles. I'd get somebody I needed a part. I'd get a cousin or I'd get my brother, and everybody, I'd just plug them in. My niece, my brother's daughter sang on some stuff, Mindy.
Mm-hmm.
We had a hit record down in Mexico City. She was only 17 at the time when she recorded it. We recorded a duet. I just called her and said, come sing. It didn't occur to me that she wouldn't be able to. She could do it fine.
Well, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe your Spanish language album is still the #1 highest selling album of all time. Is that correct?
Foreign language record.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think so. I don't know.
Huh.
You would know better than I. I'd have to look it up.
Did that surprise you?
I just didn't think about it. You know, it wasn't what I was thinking about when I wanted to record it. I wanted to record it because the songs are so beautiful. Mexican traditional music is just gorgeous, and there's so many different regions, and they're all so different.
Mm-hmm.
And the mariachi, which comes from Jalisco, was able to sort of take all those different regions and sort of unite them all under one little flag, you know. So I chose to work with the mariachi.
Mm-hmm.
And I had the two best in the world. I had the mariachi Los Camperos de Naticano, he's recently died, and I had mariachi Vargas from Mexico, and they were just incredible musicians. They're some of the best players I've ever. And it'd be like saying I want to sing jazz standards and having the, you know, I'm lost. I lost myself. Parkinson's moment here.
That's all right.
You know, having a great jazz band just fall in your lap, like
Right.
the Duke Ellington band. You
Sure.
know, that's what it was like to have the mariachi Vargas and the mariachi Los Camperos.
Yeah.
So I had these, and they were my teachers. These guys were great teachers, and I got to sing all these songs that I loved ever since I was a child. You know, but I'd sung them ever since I was a child, but not at a professional level. I had to work really hard to do that, and I spent a lot of time, you know, just sort of woodshedding with the, you know, with the little tape, you know,
Mm-hmm.
trying to learn the songs. And
Did you feel you were still learning right up to the day that you stopped singing?
oh yeah, I'm still learning. I mean, I still learn a lot of stuff about music. I can still sing in my head,
Mm-hmm.
and I do a lot of that. And anything that I've internalized, I can play music in my head. I've been playing a lot of Brian Wilson lately. I like Brian Wilson from the Beach Boys better than anybody in pop music. I mean, he's just the best melody writer, just a brilliant, genius American composer. He's just one of the best we've ever had. And when I get stuck, like sometimes I'll get a brainworm and I'll pick it up from somebody's cell phone or a melody that I don't like. I can just substitute a Brian Wilson melody and it'll cure the brainworm, you know, in a beautiful way.
God Only Knows it was my ringtone for a year.
Really? Oh, God
yeah, I
Only
love
Knows is
that
one of the
song.
best ones. My favorite is Surf's Up. I love
Oh,
Surf's
do you?
Up. Oh, God, I love
I
Surf's
just
Up.
love God Only Knows.
It's
just
probably
so-
the best one, maybe
so
God Only
beautiful.
Knows. Just it's exquisite, and the arrangement was beautiful, and
Yeah.
the recording was great. I mean, that was maybe the zenith of American popular music. You know, it was right there with the Beach Boys, right there
Pet
in California.
Sounds, that album.
It's what the best pop music record ever made. You know, Pet Sounds, Graceland.
Mm-hmm.
You know, maybe a Bob Dylan record. You can't beat them. You know.
Mm-hmm. You know, you mentioned that being on the road is not necessarily conducive to relationships. I do know. I was angry at Jerry Brown for a long time, and that's because you were supposed to be my girlfriend.
I see.
Yeah, and I thought that you were singing Blue Bayou to me.
He thought I was supposed to be his girlfriend too.
Yeah, so he really irritated me. But
He's
you had a
great.
long relationship with him.
We did. We're still friends. I mean, we were friends, and that was that. You know, we were good friends. We made each other laugh. He doesn't take himself seriously in a way that you might think. He's not center of his own universe in a way, and he's not a vindictive person. Thank God. He'll probably never speak to me again. And he's smart. He had a lot of smart people around him, so he was fun to be with.
Well, you couldn't have been surprised at the public's interest, media interest in your relationship, given, I mean, you were at the zenith of your career, and he's Jerry Brown, the governor.
Who cares? Again, you know, I mean, I don't know. We never went out in public. There were almost no pictures of us, so the public didn't get much of a view. You know, our relationship was very private,
Mm-hmm.
but it was great fun. We had a great time, and he's doing such a good job now as governor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was so pleased with the fact that he's gotten to have all these terms. It's like the Brown dynasty. It's religion, not religion. Politics is starting to set into these dynastic situations. The Clintons, the Browns.
Yeah.
It's really something.
true.
The Bushes.
And you never married. You did adopt 2 children, correct?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you always want to be a mother? What?
You know, my brothers and sisters had children, and it just seemed like it was an extension of who I was.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I was always involved in their lives, so eventually these 2 children came to me.
Mm-hmm. And how's that been?
They're big. They didn't die. They didn't go to jail. They're not drug addicts, thank God.
Yeah.
You know, if those things. I used to tell my friends, if your child doesn't grow up to be an axe murderer, you're an absolute genius as a parent. I'm standing by that.
I guess I'm still worried though. I have 2 daughters.
You worry about them until the day you die.
I suppose you do, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. You'll always be the mom. I wanted to run something by you because I don't know if you know this, but your name is part of the lexicon of 2 different sports.
Oh, Blue Bayou baseball.
Blue Bayou baseball.
Now that I'm
and
such a Giants fan.
Blue Bayou golf.
Oh, I didn't know about that because I don't like golf.
Golfers use it all the time. Off the tee, you know, people like to hit the ball a long way off the tee.
Uh-huh.
So if you drive your ball past the guy you're playing with, you did a Linda Ronstadt.
I think they should hit the ball all the way to Scotland, which is where you should be playing golf, because that's where it came from. But it's really a bad thing in the Southwest,
Yeah.
you know, because they have to use so much pesticides that goes into the water table, and there's too
And
much
the
water.
water.
We don't have
They're
enough
letting
water.
some courses in Southern California now go brown, by the way.
It's a good thing.
Yeah, yeah. But I'm glad you are aware of that, the Linda Ronstadt, Blue Bayou.
Well, I like it in baseball.
Mm-hmm. I have some things here that I just want to run by you. Sort of short-term things, like sort of quick answer things. Just your favorite album?
Well, I don't have a favorite album, but maybe it would be Pet Sounds. I don't know. You know, it depends on which kind of music.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I like a Frank Sinatra record called Only the Lonely a lot. I don't know. I don't listen to music at home.
Mm-hmm. Favorite song?
I don't have a favorite song. I mean, again, it would have to be a favorite. I like a song called The Water is Wide. I think that's a nice for traditional songs. I like Shenandoah. I like a whole bunch of songs. I don't know.
Hard to decide.
Yeah, it would be hard.
I suppose it's sort of like asking the question, which one's your favorite child?
I mean, there's so many different songs. You know, you'd
Yeah.
have to say, well, in this genre, I like this one a lot.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have favorites.
Did you have a favorite venue to perform live in?
Well, let's see. I like playing in a real theater always. Like, you know, there was the Fox Theater in Atlanta is a nice place to play. I like a proscenium, and I like good sound, and I like for people to sit still and listen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't like playing in a sports arena, for instance, because you have to work so hard to get people to focus their attention on the stage. The Greeks knew that by using a proscenium, you could focus people's attention right where it needed to go, and a lot of the work was already done for you, you know. The whole idea of having a lobby, you know, it separates you from the hoi polloi outside. You have an intent to go in and hear something. A good theater should prepare you for an experience of magical reality. And a well-designed theater should do that. And, you know, a place like, trying to remember the theaters in LA, I can't remember anymore what they are. I don't remember.
Greek, Wiltern, and all those.
Which one?
Greek and the Wiltern.
The Wiltern's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Greek theater's a little big.
Well, you mentioned sports arenas. What's the largest crowd you've ever performed in front of?
I think we had 1 million people one time.
1 million?
Maybe, yeah. I think it was at a No Nukes concert, but I can't remember. You know, who knows? I can't remember. There were a lot of people. We used to play regularly for 40,000 seaters.
Wow. Your favorite band? Do you have one?
Well, I really like Tom Petty and the Heartbreakers. I like them because they came along after the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Byrds and Bob Dylan, and they absorbed a lot of those influences and still turned it into something that's completely originally their own thing, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So I like that. They were kind of latecomers, and they really got the form, and they hooked onto it in a really original way, I thought. I love Tom Petty's singing. I like his songwriting.
Yeah.
I love the band.
Do you have a favorite musician, or is that Tom Petty, did I ask?
I don't have a favorite musician. I have favorite, like there's a bunch of guitar players that I really like. I like Richard Thompson, you know, as an acoustic guitar player. He doesn't come any better than that. I love Ry Cooder, you know, these people that have their own voice. They have an absolute solo voice that can't be duplicated in any way. Leo Kottke is a wonderful guitar player. You know, they're all people that just have a totally unique approach. There's so much, people think you just put your finger on the fret. There's so much that happens with guitar playing. They're pulling the strings in and out of tune. They're tempering the tuning all the time, getting different kind of buzzes and vibrations and sounds out of it. And everybody has, I loved Lowell George, you know, he's a great slide guitar player. Record is a slide guitar player too. Both really great players, sound completely different, you know, same kind of deal, strings and a slide, but they sound totally different.
How would you describe your voice?
I don't know. I wouldn't know how to describe it. It doesn't sound the same to me as it does to you, you know, because I'm hearing all the internal resonance.
Right.
I wouldn't know.
How would you describe your career?
Turbulent, I suppose, but and eclectic mania, you know. But there's a reason why for all that rampant eclecticism. It wasn't arbitrary. There were all of those kinds of music that I did were in the living room in my family's house before I was 10. You know, Mexican music, rock and roll, country music, American standards, Gilbert and Sullivan. My grandfather in the 1880s made some arrangements to Gilbert and Sullivan things for his little band that he had in Tucson. You know, I've got the parts still. So Pirates of Penzance was in my blood. My grandfather played it. My mother liked it. Then we did it, you know, so it was just sort of handed down the generations. Seemed perfectly natural to me when someone said, "You want to come and do Gilbert and Sullivan?" I said, "Yeah." Never mind, I didn't know how to sing like that. I just decided to do it.
Yeah.
I knew the songs.
You know, so many times today you've answered when I've asked about sort of important events in your life, like appearing on the cover of Rolling Stone, appearing on the cover of Time magazine, or this or that, your answer's been, well, really, what does it matter? Do you believe you've had a remarkable career?
I don't think about it like that. I think about the songs that I didn't get to sing. I'm a little sad about that. I think about songs that I would maybe sing if I had a chance to do now. And I think about the reasons that I would be singing like that, like the Monday nights in front of the Metropolitan Jail, you know, in Los Angeles. I would be down there singing every Monday night because there would be a reason to do it. Got a lot of my politics from music. Like I learned a lot of stuff from Pete Seeger about the labor movement, about civil rights, about human rights, you know, a tremendous amount from his songs and his singing. He educated a whole generation of people, many generations of people. So there are reasons for us to use our music to make people understand what it's like to have an experience, somebody else's kind of experience. You know, it's a great mirror to hold up to the culture. And it's important to use it in that way, and that would be a great chance, but I can't do it.
If you could do it, is there one particular song that you would like to record or sing?
Oh, there's a whole bunch of them.
What would they
Especially
be?
in Spanish. There's a lot of songs in Spanish. I don't know. I can't think of them right now, but let me think. There's a good Elvis Costello wrote a song with I can't remember his name anymore. Burt Bacharach. It was called I Still Have That Other Girl in My Head. I would sing that. I was sad that I didn't get to sing that. It's a really good song.
What did you like so much about that song?
Great melody, great words, you know, just great sentiment. Really well crafted. Two really good songwriters.
Good, we've reached that age because people say it to me too, but I just have to tell you again, you look so great.
Oh, you're so nice.
You really do.
You're nice. I'm almost 70. Can you believe it?
It is hard to believe, but trust me, we're all going that way.
I know.
Yeah.
I think
Do you have anything you want me to?
I love the story about the first album you ever heard when you were 2 years old. Was it the Pastora Pavon?
Pastora
Or
Pavon,
maybe
yeah.
the female influences.
Yeah. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, that'd be great. Tell me
Well,
about
the first thing
You
I
were
remember,
two and you're
yeah, I was
cognizant of
2
this
years
memory?
old, and it was a '78 recording, and it was a yellow. In those days, you'd have like a proper album with, you know, several records in the album. You'd sort of turn the pages, be like these envelopes with these heavy '78 records in them. And I loved this record. It was Pastora Pavon. She was a woman from Spain. She was a Roma, gypsy. They call them gypsies. flamenco singer, the best probably of her generation and ours too. And I remember hearing that and thinking, that woman's in trouble. She needs help. You know, that was my 2-year-old perception of that. That like she needed somebody to help her. Like I want to find out her address and send the help over there. And then I just listened to her singing, and I couldn't tear myself away from it. It was just the most amazing thing I've ever heard. Well, as soon as I learned how to operate the record player, then I would play it over and over and over again. And we probably scratched the records. Eventually, they became unplayable. And I never heard her voice from maybe about the age of 5 until recently when I looked her up on YouTube and found her there. The same records, oh my God, and I heard that voice, and it had the same impact on me now as it did then. It was just absolutely destroyed me. She's just a brilliant singer.
Did it also bring back a flood of memories about your youth?
Not so much as it just brought back an idea of why people sing, what it is that, you know, she was singing about her whole life, about every man that ever betrayed her, about the wars that were going on, how people had suffered in the war. There was starvation, there was death, there was tremendous deprivation, there was fear, there was hope, there was all those things in her voice, you know, because the Roma people were treated horribly in Europe, and for centuries, you know, and during World War II they suffered probably worse than any other ethnic group, just were treated badly. So you could hear all that in her singing, and I just thought, and then years later I heard a flamenco singer. I was in my late 20s, I think, and I thought, I want to be able to sing like that when I grow up. I want to be able to sing grown-up music, not just tethered to, ooh, ah, baby, I want to have a date with you, but the whole experience of a human's life, you know, what it is like, your babies, your men, your sister, your hopes, your dreams, your disappointments, all those things should be, they're all sort of tangled up in your sound, whatever it is. Everything that ever happened to you is like a clear colored gel, and you know, you get an experience, you just put it down. It's like putting in front of that light there. It changes the whole slant of things. It changes the color of the light, changes the color of your sound. So everything that ever happens to you, every book you ever read, every song you ever listened to, it all becomes part of what you put back out. So I always tell young artists, you know, go to every museum, read every book you can read a lot. Reading is really important. The world is divided into people who read and the rest of them. People that read always have an advantage, I think. And so everything you ever read, everything you ever saw, every dance you ever saw, every dance you ever did, that all becomes a part of it, becomes a part of your voice. And it changes the sound of it and makes it richer and better.
That's beautiful.
And then just future musicians, I read that you just thought that Amy Winehouse was really talented. What other young musicians?
Oh yeah, I was going to ask you
Amy
about
Winehouse.
any young musicians that you enjoy.
Well, you know, again, I hear things on YouTube. I don't get out very much to hear stuff, and there are a lot of talent never leaves the gene pool. That's the thing to keep in mind. There are always a lot of good talent in every generation. But I was watching Anna Netrebko. I'm a really fan of her. She's a Russian soprano opera singer, and I was watching an interview of hers, and they asked her who she liked, and she said she liked the singer Amy Winehouse. I said, I'm going to look her up on YouTube. Well, I was just floored. I mean, what a singer. The poor girl, when she was sober, when she had her mind together, she was really an amazing singer, and there were times when she was singing badly. Too bad it's all on YouTube, but I just thought she looked like someone was heading 180 miles an hour into the wall. I could tell that she was going to have trouble, but I think she was, it's not a best, but she was definitely, nobody was better than she was for that era. You know,
We had one of those in our generation. Did you ever meet her?
No. What are you talking about?
Oh Lord, won't you buy me a Mercedes Benz?
Well, she's a good singer. Yeah.
Yeah. Did you ever meet her?
Yeah, I knew her. She
Did
was
you
very
really?
nice.
What was she like?
She was smart and she was a reader. She liked reading. She was funny.
Janice read a lot of books?
Yeah, she was a big Scott Fitzgerald fan.
Really?
I know people by what they like to read. I'm a Fitzgerald fan. I liked The Great Gatsby.
What was she like when she wasn't on stage?
Well, I ran into her one night at the Troubadour. She had a new dress on. She was really happy about her new dress. She thought it looked pretty on her. She wanted to come down to the Troubadour, everybody see her new dress. We talked about that. And then we talked about, like, we couldn't figure out what to wear on stage, whether we're supposed to be funky or whether we're supposed to be pretty. And we sort of agreed that Maria Muldaur, who was the girl singer in the Queskin Jug Band, that we decided that she was the one that dressed really well. We thought she had that, really rode that line between funk and femininity really well. We were really a fan of her singing. We liked her a lot.
You used to go to a lot of vintage stores, didn't you?
Yeah, I originally of necessity, and then eventually because I liked the style. I used to wear a lot of Victorian clothes. in those days, you know, the hippies in the 60s and the 70s, we'd just show up in a button and bow. Nobody noticed. We never paid it much mind.
Did you wear a Cub Scout uniform?
I wore a Cub Scout uniform. I remember I was just on the road and wasn't eating, and my clothes were falling off me. I had to go buy some new clothes. And I went with Nicolette Larson, my best friend, and we went to one of those, what do they call it, like some kind of secondhand clothes store, you know, surplus store they call it, yeah. And they had the only thing they had in our size was a Cub Scout uniform. I was so tiny I could just wear little children's clothes. So we got these Cub Scout uniforms, and we thought they'd be really good to wear. We're playing these outdoor venues in the summertime, but you go up to Michigan, it'd be really cold at night, you know. So I'd wear a couple of pairs of tights, and I'd put an undershirt under the Cub Scout uniform, wear the hat and the kerchief, and I'd keep warm, you know. So it was a good thing to wear. And it was really a practical thing. I thought this will look really cute on stage, and it'll be warm too.
That's funny.
She had one and I had one.
Anything else?
Do you want to ask about the Aaron Neville collaboration?
Yeah, you did a collaboration with him.
Oh, I love Aaron Neville. I mean, he is one of the great singers of all time. He's one of the voices of pop music, you know. Aaron comes out of the Creole tradition, which is Catholic and related to European, really 18th century Baroque opera singing in its sort of vocal embellishment style, more than what like our R&B, like Otis Redding would be more on the backbeat. It's Protestant. It's a belting style. Aaron has this style where the French Baroque opera singers used to, when they go high, they'd always go into the falsetto. And they do these certain kinds of embellishments, 18th century embellishments, very florid little embellishments that were certain styles from different regions. And that was brought over to New Orleans by the Creoles, who would send their children to be educated in Europe. And Aaron's is a great example of that kind of Creole 18th century style of singing that's been frozen there in time in New Orleans. And he's one of the great voices of doo-wop, and he's one of the best doo-wop singers ever. And I met him, let's see, I went down to hear him sing. They were having the World's Fair in New Orleans. We were there. We had Plaz Johnson in the band playing sax, and he was from New Orleans. He said, oh, the Neville Brothers are playing down. You know, all musicians knew the Neville Brothers. Neville Brothers are playing down in New Orleans. We got to go down there, downtown tonight. So we went down to the club they were playing in, and I'd never met them, but I'd always go hear them when they'd come to Los Angeles. All the musical community would go hear them. And somehow Aaron found out I was in the audience. I didn't know he knew me from Adams off Ox, you know, so he invited me up on stage to sing. Well, I never would do that because I'd be too shy, or I wouldn't want to try to get up and sing something I hadn't rehearsed. But I wasn't going to turn down Aaron Neville, so I went up there. I said, what are we going to do, you know? And he said, we're going to sing some doo-wop. I went, fine, I'm a soprano. I get up on the high harmony above Aaron, I'll be fine. And that's what we did. We were both singing falsetto and just doo-wopping away. And the next morning I woke up, and my first thought was, I woke up in my covers and I went, oh, boy, I like singing with Aaron Neville. That sounded pretty good. And then I thought, you idiot, everybody sounds good when they're singing with Aaron Neville. Everybody thinks that, you know. So I thought, I'd really want to make a record with him. And then I thought, oh, forget it. You know, everybody liked to make a record with Aaron Neville. So about 3 months later, I had an invitation from him to come and sing at a benefit for the New Orleans Artists Against Hunger and Homelessness, because you don't pay any property tax in Louisiana, so there's no state services for anybody, for poor people. People just die of hunger on the street. So Aaron and a Catholic nun named Sister Jane Remsen organized this concerts to try to help people. So I went back to do this benefit, and we wanted to sing something together. Well, what do we know? We didn't know anything together, but we both knew the Schubert's Ave Maria because we were both raised Catholic. We decided to sing that in Latin, so that's what we sang. And then I thought, well, okay, and after we finished learning and rehearsing, I said, we got to make a record together, Aaron, because I could tell our voices sounded good together, you know.
Yeah.
And he was up for it, so he came out. I found 4 songs, and he recorded 4 songs on my next album with me.
Yeah.
And we went out working as a duet. It was really fun. Best fun I ever had singing.
Great.
Because I get to do things with him, you know, riding on his voice. It's like the Aaron ride. You know, I could do things when I'd sing with him that I couldn't do on my own. It's really great.
It's interesting perspective. What was it like working with Dolly Parton, Emmylou Harris?
Same deal. I mean, what great singers both those women are. They're just incredibly good singers. And what I loved about the trio that we sang in was that Dolly and I could duet, Emmy and I could duet, Dolly and Emmy could duet. We could sing with me on the top, me on the bottom, me in the middle, Emmy in the top, Emmy in the bottom. It didn't matter. Whatever, we'd figure out a way to combine our voices and we could make it sound good.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounded good just like that. You know, it was, again, when we first sang together, we were kind of surprised because musicians hang out and jam all the time, and it sounds pretty good because we're all professionals, you know. But when the three of us, when our voices came up together, they excite each other's voices. They excite the sort of overtones in each other's voices in a way that made it just bigger than the sum of the parts. You know, it was bigger than what it was. And we were astonished. We went, wow, you know. And again, we really wanted to record together, but it took a long time to figure it out because there were 3 different record companies and 3 different managers and 3 different agencies. And it's a great regret of mine that we didn't have at least a couple of tours where we really would have been able to work our vocals out because it would have been fabulous. It was the most fun I've ever had singing, you know, was with them or with Aaron.
Yeah. I'm out. I'm tapped out.
Yeah, just the book. You have a book out?
Oh, yeah.
Well, my book just came out in paperback. It came out a year ago.
Right,
but
a
they
year
just
ago it came out.
brought it out in paperback. After
What prompted you to write that?
Well, people, actually, because one of the publishing companies called up and said they were interested in a book about music, which is what would interest me more than, you know, personal stuff. So I decided that a lot of people had written about me, about the things I'd recorded and why I'd sung them, and lots of times they weren't accurate, and I thought I might as well just write about what my process was, why I had such a rampant, eclectic overview of music, and, you know, what were the influences that prompted that, and how I went about my musical process, what I thought about the other people I was
Well,
playing
you
with.
were reticent to write the book, right?
Well, I turned down a lot of other offers, you know, that were sort of more kiss and tell kind of things. I didn't think that would serve any purpose particularly. But
I think I read something, though, where you said you're not a writer.
well, I had no skill at writing. I never kept a diary or a journal. I never kept letters or anything like that. I'd only written a thank you note, you know. I don't write long letters. I just write a thank you note. But I read a lot, so I thought, well, at least I know a fluid prose style. I'd be able to recognize that on the page, and I knew the story. And I figured out if I wrote it down, and I just asked myself 2 questions: is it clear, and is it true? You know, can I make it clear? Is it? And then I'd think, is there too much stuff that you know, could I say it in a simpler way, and take out more words? So then that was what I did. Otherwise, I don't know anything about writing.
Are you as proud of the book as you are your music?
I don't know. I don't read the book. You know, I mean, I wrote the book, and I checked all the facts, and I think it's true. I don't think we have too many mistakes in there. And it's what happened to me. If anybody's interested in it, they can read about it. You know, it's down to my own words.
Yeah.
I didn't have any ghostwriter or anything like that.
Yeah, and most people did. And I knew
Wrote it
you
all
were
sitting here on the
reluctant
sofa with my laptop.
to- Yeah. Was it easier than you thought, the process, or was it more difficult?
No, writing's really hard. I think writing's really, really, really hard. I knew that because I'd lived with some writers, and I knew it was hard. And also I know that, you know, there's a real difference between Dostoevsky and some schlock writer. So I know that all art is like every other art. Like dancing is really hard. It's really hard to do well. Everybody can dance, but nobody can dance like Baryshnikov, for instance, you know. And the same way with music. Music is really, really, really hard to do well. Everybody can do it, and everybody should do it. And people shouldn't feel bashful or embarrassed about doing it or apologetic. Everybody should do their own music. But the music that's really extraordinary and transcendent, that's in a different category. That's for those people that are really special, that know how to do that. I don't put myself up in that really exalted category. I'm a pretty good singer. I think I did pretty well.
You're a pretty good singer.
I don't think I'm a great singer. I think I'm a you know, a competent singer, highly competent, I would
You're
say.
humble.
Well, I think I can see it. You know, there's a Pastora Pavone, or there's an Aretha Franklin, or there's a Otis Redding that's up there, and there's a Linda that's down here somewhere. It's fine, you know.
We have a difference of opinion. That's all I got.
When he brought up the piece of paper and said, I have some questions to ask you, I started to widen out because I thought he was going to show her something. So I don't know if you need that first question, because then I slowly went back in on it.
No, because we weren't,
Paul, can you
each
scoot
one
to
had
your
an
left just a
answer.
little bit? I want to try and get an
It's
over-the-shoulder
fine.
shot.
Sure. Right there?
Yeah, perfect.
So I shut off, is that okay? And just, you want to shoot?
You're the wide shots now, right?
I'm getting an over-the-shoulder shot with Paul asking questions.
Can I just step in and smooth her hair?
You rolling?
Yeah, I am, but she wants to do something here.
Sure.
Smooth her hair, just right here.
Sure.
All right. Well,
Audio later.
there's actually a question I do want to ask. Since
That's perfect.
you've written one book, do you foresee any other books?
I don't, you know, I knew the story of my life. I think it's easier to write a story about yourself than it is to write a story about a concept of something.
Right.
Like, if I were going to write a book of the comparative economies of Argentina, Canada, and the United States and South Africa, for instance, you know, a book I'd like to read,
Sure.
I'd have a hard time doing the research. You know, I don't
Mhm.
think I'd know where to start.
Right.
Somebody else is going to have to write that book.
Mhm. I was just curious, you know, because once someone writes that first one, and albeit even if it's autobiographical, that writing bug tends to hit people, and then you see a second, third book,
Yeah.
a third book, a fourth book, a fifth book, you know.
Jen,
Not today, there
just
isn't.
your, whatever that is, your right.
You're right.
tiny bit.
Okay.
I've just seen one of your tripod legs in this wider shot. So if you could just,
Okay, the
can
whole
you just scoot
camera.
out like an inch or so? Yeah, perfect. And
Can you see me now?
No, you're good.
Okay, I'm just gonna move, just slide over for just a second while you're getting that.
Okay.
Sure.
That way it'll. I can move
And-
fast.
Hold on one second. Yeah. What made you decide? I mean, because you can live anywhere you want to live. What made you decide to live here in the city?
Well, I like the fact that it was to a human scale, that it had it was a walking city, that there was, you know, accommodation for pedestrians. Because in sprawl development, people forget that, you know, they make every accommodation for a car, forgetting that once you get out of your car, you become a pedestrian
Mhm.
and you're fair game out there. It's freeway sprawl and, you know, urban sprawl. I don't like it. It's a very uncomfortable
Mhm.
setting. And unfortunately, it was afflicted on Los Angeles and Tucson, Arizona, where I'm from,
Mhm.
equal proportions. Tucson has got, I lived there for 10 years before I moved back here. Tucson's got an amazing downtown scene going on now that just seemed to grow very organically, but they got a lot of restaurants and theaters downtown now, and a lot of college kids on the street at night. So it's good.
It's a
Tucson's
good
doing
thing,
pretty
yeah.
well.
Yeah.
But at the time that I was living there with my children, there really wasn't much of an urban pedestrian scene. And my kids, you know, my son wanted to ride a skateboard, and they wanted to walk to school, and they wanted to be part of a neighborhood.
Mhm.
And I said, okay, we'll move back to San Francisco.
Yeah. And you've indicated to me earlier that you really like this neighborhood because, I mean, let's face it, you're a superstar. You're Linda Ronstadt. You had it difficult to maintain your privacy, but you said you've sort of found an equilibrium in this neighborhood.
I love this neighborhood. I know all my neighbors. I know everybody. And if my cat runs away, I can call them up and say, have you seen my cat? And they go, yeah, he's over here under our porch. You know, it's just, it's real quiet. There's no noise over here. There's no traffic. I can see the Golden Gate Bridge. It's nice.
Mm-hmm.
It's a real liberal neighborhood. I like that.
Anything else?
I think we're good.
All right.
You don't need a wide.
It's quarter after